Captain Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of the orbital defense station and watched Earth turn slowly below him. The blue planet looked peaceful in the morning light. White clouds moved across the oceans like soft cotton. Cities sparkled like tiny diamonds on the dark continents. Jake had seen this view 1,000 times, but it never got old. The year was 2387. Humans had been living in space for over 200 years now. They built cities on the moon, grew food on Mars, and mined rocks in the asteroid belt. 5 years ago, they met their first aliens. The meeting went well. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Federation. They welcomed humans as new friends. Jake walked back to his command chair. The defense station called New Horizon was his home and his job. He commanded 50 people who watched the space around Earth. They looked for trouble, but trouble rarely came. Most days were quiet and boring. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station nearby. She stared at 3 big screens full of numbers and moving dots. Each dot was a ship or a rock floating in space. Amy knew where every dot belonged. She had been doing this job for 3 years. "Captain," Amy said suddenly. Her voice sounded strange. "I'm getting some weird readings." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of weird?" Amy pointed at her middle screen. "Big gravity waves coming from the edge of the solar system. Really big ones, like something huge just dropped out of hyperspace." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "How big?" Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. The screen changed to show new information. Her face went pale. "Sir, I count at least 9,000 ships. Maybe more." The command center went quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Amy's screen. 9,000 ships was more than the entire human space fleet. "Much more, are you sure?" Jake asked. Amy checked her readings again. "Yes, sir. 9,897 ships. They're all moving toward Earth." Jake hit the red alert button. Loud sirens started wailing throughout the station. "Get me Admiral Stone right now." Admiral Rick Stone appeared on the main screen 2 minutes later. He was an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. Behind him, Jake could see the busy command center of Earth's military headquarters. "Jake, what's the situation?" "Admiral, we have nearly 10,000 unknown ships approaching from deep space. They're not broadcasting any friendly signals." Admiral Stone's face grew dark. 10,000? That's impossible. The Federation only has a few hundred ships in this sector. "Sir, Lieutenant Carter has confirmed the count. These ships are not from the Federation." Admiral Stone was quiet for a moment. "How long until they reach Earth?" Amy spoke up. "At their current speed, about 18 hours, sir." 18 hours, Admiral Stone repeated. "Jake, I'm calling up the entire defense fleet. Get your people ready, this might be bad." The screen went dark. Jake turned to face his crew. They all looked scared. He didn't blame them. The human defense fleet had only 387 ships. They were good ships, but not nearly enough to fight 10,000 enemies. "Listen up, everyone," Jake said. "We don't know who these visitors are or what they want, but we're going to be ready for them. Amy, keep tracking those ships. Send all the data to Fleet Command. Everyone else, prepare the station for combat operations." His crew got busy. They checked weapons, tested shields, and sent messages to other defense stations. Jake watched them work and felt proud. These were good people. They would do their jobs no matter what happened. Lieutenant Danny Price called from the fighter bay. "Captain, my squadron is ready to launch. Just give the word." "Hold position for now, Danny. We need to see what these ships want first." 6 hours later, the unknown ships were close enough to see clearly. They were huge and dark, shaped like long daggers. Each ship was twice the size of Earth's biggest battleship. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish. Commander. Lisa Bell arrived on the station with orders from Admiral Stone. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and quick hands. "Jake, I need to use your communications array. Admiral Stone wants to try talking to them." "Go ahead, Lisa, the whole system is yours." Lisa worked at the communications station for an hour. She sent messages in every language humans knew. She used Federation communication codes. She even sent simple math problems to show that humans were intelligent. Nothing worked. The alien ships stayed silent, then suddenly they answered. The message came in perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical. Humans of Earth. We are the Kethvar Empire. Your species has grown too quickly. You have become a threat to Galactic Order. You have 24 hours to surrender your planet unconditionally. If you refuse, we will destroy your entire species. You cannot fight us. You cannot hide from us. You will surrender, or you will die. The message ended. The command center was completely silent. Lisa looked at Jake with wide eyes. They want us to surrender our entire planet? Jake nodded slowly. That's what they said. But we just joined the Federation 5 years ago. We've never hurt anyone. We've never even had a real war with another species. Doesn't matter to them, apparently. Amy spoke from her station. Captain, I'm detecting more ships. The count is now 9,900 exactly. Jake walked back to the window and looked down at Earth. Somewhere down there, 8 billion people were living their normal lives. They had no idea that in 24 hours, everything might end. He touched the communication button that connected him to Admiral Stone. Admiral, did you get that message? We all heard it, Jake. The President is calling an emergency meeting, but I think we both know what the answer is going to be. Jake nodded. We fight. We fight, Admiral Stone agreed. Get your people ready, Captain. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 9,900 enemy ships were getting ready to destroy his home. He thought about his sister on Mars and his parents in New York. He thought about all the places on Earth he would never see again. Then he thought about the human spirit. Humans had always been fighters. They fought diseases, disasters, and each other. They never gave up when things got hard. Maybe they couldn't win against 9,900 ships, but they could make the enemy pay a terrible price. Amy, he called out, send a message to all defense stations and ships. Tell them to prepare for battle. Tell them we're going to show these Kethvar what humans are really made of. The 24 hours passed too quickly. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet spread out like a dark cloud around Earth. The Kethvar ships moved in perfect lines and circles. They looked like they had practiced this attack many times. Before Admiral Stone's voice came through the speakers. All ships, this is Fleet Command. The enemy has refused our request to talk. They want only surrender or death. We choose to fight. Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every human who will ever be born. Make them pay for every inch of space. Jake looked at his crew on the New Horizon. They were scared, but ready. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station, tracking enemy movements. Commander, Lisa Bell worked at the weapons controls. Lieutenant Danny Price waited in his fighter, ready to launch. Jake, Admiral Stone called on the private channel. I want you to lead the first attack. Take 12 ships and hit their command group. Try to confuse them, make them think we have a plan. Jake almost laughed. Do we have a plan, Admiral? The plan is simple. We hurt them as much as we can before we die. Maybe that will make other aliens think twice about attacking Earth in the future. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Understood, Admiral. We'll give them something to remember. Jake called his squadron commanders. This is Morrison. We're going in first. Follow my lead and don't try to be heroes. We want to hit them fast and get out. Our job is to make them angry and stupid. The 12 human ships moved toward the enemy fleet. They were small compared to the massive Kethvar battleships. Jake's ship, the New Horizon, was not even a real warship. It was a defense station with engines attached, but it had big guns and thick armor. Captain, Amy said, the enemy ships are not moving to stop us. They're just watching. Jake understood. The Kethvar thought humans were too weak to be a real threat. They were wrong. Danny, launch your fighters. Everyone else, pick your targets. We hit the big ships in the center. 20 human fighters raced, ahead of the main group. Lieutenant Danny Price led them in a wild dance around the enemy ships. The fighters moved in ways that made no sense. They spun and twisted like leaves in the wind. The Kethvar tried to shoot them down, but their weapons could not track the crazy human movements. Danny's fighters were not trying to fly in straight lines or perfect formations. They flew like humans thought. Fast, wild, and unpredictable. "What are they doing?" Amy asked, watching the fighters on her screen. "They're thinking like humans," Jake said. "The aliens expect us to fight like machines, but we're not machines." Danny's voice came over the radio. He was laughing as his fighter rolled under a massive enemy laser blast. "These big ships can't turn fast enough to catch us. It's like fighting elephants with mosquitoes." The fighters reached the enemy command ships. They fired their small missiles at the huge vessels. The missiles did not do much damage, but they hit exactly where Danny aimed them, at the sensor arrays and communication dishes. Suddenly, 3 of the big Kethvar ships could not talk to each other. They started turning in different directions, trying to find the fighters that had already moved away. "Now!" Jake shouted. "All ships, full attack!" The 12 human ships charged into the confused enemy formation. Jake aimed the New Horizon at the biggest Kethvar battleship. His weapons officer, Sergeant Tony Clark, fired everything they had. The human ships did not fight like the Kethvar expected. Instead of staying in formation, each ship went in a different direction. Instead of fighting from far away, they got as close as possible. Instead of following rules, they did whatever worked. Commander Helen Ross, commanding the ship called Earth's Fury, flew her vessel between 2 enemy battleships. The aliens tried to shoot her, but they hit each other instead. Helen laughed over the radio. "They're so worried about hitting their own ships they can't shoot straight." The battle was chaos. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They hit the enemy where it hurt most, then ran away before the big guns could target them. It was not fair fighting. It was human fighting. Jake watched his weapons hit the enemy command ship. The massive vessel's shields flashed and sparked. Then something exploded inside the ship. The whole front section went dark. "Direct hit," Tony shouted. "Their main weapon is down." But the victory cost them. The Kethvar were learning fast. They started firing in all directions, not caring if they hit their own ships. 3 human vessels exploded in bright flashes. Jake felt each death like a punch to his chest. "Pull back," he ordered. "We've done enough damage here." The surviving human ships raced away from the enemy fleet. Behind them, the Kethvar formation was in chaos. 12 ships had been destroyed or badly damaged. Several more were drifting with no power. But Jake had lost 3 ships and 60 crew members. The enemy still had over 9,000 ships left. "Admiral," Jake reported, "first attack complete. We took out 12 enemy vessels and damaged several more. Cost us 3 ships. Admiral Stone's voice was grim. "Good work, Jake. But they're really angry now. The whole fleet is moving toward Earth. All ships, prepare for the main battle." Jake looked at his remaining ships. They were damaged and low on ammunition. His crew was tired and scared, but something had happened during the fight. They had seen that the enemy could be hurt. The Kethvar were not gods. They were just another species that could bleed. "Amy," Jake said, "how many enemy ships are still working?" Amy checked her screens. "About 9,883, sir. But 15 of them are moving slowly, probably damaged." Jake smiled for the first time in hours. "So we hurt them more than they hurt us?" "Yes, sir, much more." "Good. Send that information to all human ships. Let everyone know that these aliens can be beaten. It just takes more work than usual." The Kethvar fleet began moving toward Earth, like a giant metal storm. They had learned that humans were dangerous. Now they wanted to finish the fight quickly. Jake prepared his ships for the next battle. He knew most of them would not survive. But the enemy would remember this day. They would remember that humans do not give up, even when facing impossible odds. The real fight was about to begin. The Kethvar fleet moved closer to Earth like a wall of death. Their ships spread out to surround the planet completely. There would be no escape for anyone. Admiral Stone ordered all human ships to form a protective ring around Earth, but everyone knew it was not enough. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy approach from his command chair. The first battle had shown that humans could hurt the aliens, but the cost was terrible. For every HFY ship destroyed, humans lost 10 ships. The math was simple and brutal. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Carter called out. "I'm getting a strange signal from the medical ship, Mercy Angel." Jake looked at the main screen. The Mercy Angel was a hospital ship commanded by Captain Sue Martinez. It carried no weapons, only doctors and medical supplies. The ship was supposed to stay far from the fighting. "Put her through," Jake said. "Captain." Martinez appeared on the screen. She was a small woman with fierce eyes and graying hair. Behind her, Jake could see injured soldiers lying on hospital beds. "Jake, I need to tell you something important. These wounded HFY prisoners we picked up, they're acting very strange." "Strange how?" "They keep asking us why we fight when we know we will lose. They cannot understand it. Their own soldiers surrender when they think death is certain. But humans keep fighting even when there is no hope." Jake thought about this. "What are you saying, Sue?" "I'm saying we have something they don't understand. Something that scares them more than our weapons." Before Jake could answer, alarms started, ringing throughout his ship. The HFY fleet had begun their main attack. Thousands of energy beams lit up space like deadly fireworks. Captain Martinez's image flickered on the screen. "Jake, I have an idea. A crazy idea." "Tell me." "The Mercy Angel has no weapons, so they ignore us. But we have medical supplies, including chemicals that could be very dangerous if mixed together. What if we turn our medical ship into a weapon?" Jake stared at her. "Sue, that's suicide. Maybe. But it might save more lives than it costs." Before Jake could stop her, Captain Martinez cut the connection. On his screen, Jake watched the Mercy Angel turn toward the enemy fleet. The small medical ship looked like a tiny bird flying toward a flock of eagles. "All ships," Admiral Stone's voice came over the radio. "The enemy is concentrating their attack on the orbital defense platforms. We need to protect them at all costs." Jake looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was already falling apart. Ships exploded every few seconds. The HFY were using their superior numbers to surround and destroy each human vessel. "Captain," Sergeant Tony Clark shouted from the weapons station, "enemy boarding parties are trying to get onto Defense Platform 7. Jake could see the platform on his screen. It was under attack by dozens of small HFY ships. They were cutting through the hull with laser torches, trying to get inside and capture the station. "Danny, take your fighters and help Platform 7 stop those boarding parties." Lieutenant Danny Price's voice crackled over the radio. "On our way, Captain, but we're running low on ammunition." "Then use whatever you have left." Jake watched. Danny's fighters raced toward the besieged platform. Instead of using their guns, the fighters started ramming into the alien boarding ships. The human pilots were turning their own fighters into missiles. "What are they doing?" Amy asked in horror. "They're doing what humans do," Jake said quietly. "They're refusing to give up." On Platform 7, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Adams was leading the defense against the HFY boarders. The aliens had cut through the hull and were fighting in the corridors. But Steve had turned every hallway into a trap. Steve's voice came over the emergency channel. "These aliens fight like machines. Perfect formation, perfect timing, perfect plans. But humans don't fight perfect. We fight dirty." Jake could hear weapons fire and explosions in the background. Steve was using maintenance tunnels and air vents to attack the aliens from unexpected directions. His small team of defenders was holding off hundreds of enemy soldiers. "Steve, can you hold them?" "As long as it takes, Jake. These corridors are our home. We know every inch of this place. The aliens are lost in here." Suddenly a new voice came over the radio. It was Dr. Alice Green, calling from the hidden research base on the far side of the moon. "All ships, this is Lunar Research Station. I've been studying the battle recordings and I've discovered something important about the enemy." "What is it, Alice?" Admiral Stone asked. "The HFY make decisions based on logic and probability. When they calculate that a battle cannot be won, their soldiers stop fighting. But humans keep fighting even when logic says they should surrender. This confuses their commanders and makes their soldiers afraid." Jake understood what she was saying. You mean our stubbornness is actually a weapon? Exactly. The Kethvar have never fought an enemy that refuses to accept defeat. They don't know how to deal with it. On his screen, Jake watched the Mercy Angel reach the enemy fleet. Captain Martinez had turned her medical ship into a giant bomb. When it exploded, it took 3 Kethvar battleships with it. The explosion sent a message to every human ship in the fleet. One medical ship had just done more damage than a squadron of fighters. Not because it had better weapons, but because Captain Martinez had been willing to sacrifice everything. All ships, Jake called out. You saw what the Mercy Angel just did. We may not have the biggest guns or the strongest shields, but we have something the enemy cannot understand. We have the will to fight when fighting seems hopeless. Engineer Ben Parker's voice came over the radio from Mining Station Delta. Captain Morrison, I've got an idea. We have mining explosives here, and I think I can turn them into something special. What kind of special? The kind that makes big holes in enemy ships. Jake smiled. This was what made humans dangerous. Not their technology or their training, but their ability to turn anything into a weapon when they needed to. Pilot Karen White called from her damaged fighter. Captain, my life support is failing, but I still have engine power. Permission to ram the enemy command ship? Negative, Karen. Get to safety. Sir, with respect, safety is not the human way. Jake watched Karen's fighter streak toward the massive Kethvar command vessel. She hit it at full speed right in the bridge section. The entire front of the alien ship went dark. The battle raged on, but something had changed. The Kethvar fleet was no longer advancing in perfect formation. Their ships were spreading out, trying to avoid the suicide attacks. They were afraid. Fear was something the Kethvar did not understand. But humans understood it very well. They had been afraid their whole lives, and they had learned to keep fighting anyway. Jake prepared his remaining ships for the next wave of attacks. The enemy still outnumbered them terribly, but now the aliens knew they were fighting something they had never encountered before. They were fighting the human spirit. Only 47 human ships remained. Captain Jake Morrison looked at his tactical screen and felt a cold weight in his chest. The Kethvar still had nearly 4,000 ships left. The math was impossible, but humans had never been good at math when it came to giving up. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the main screen. The old man looked tired and wounded. Blood ran down his forehead from a cut above his eye. Behind him, Jake could see smoke and sparks in the fleet command center. Jake, we're going to make one final push at their flagship. If we can take out their command structure, maybe their fleet will fall apart. Jake nodded. How many ships do you want me to bring? All of them. Every ship we have left. This is our last chance to hurt them badly enough that they'll remember us forever. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her station. Captain, I'm detecting movement in the civilian evacuation ships. They're turning back toward Earth. Jake felt his heart sink. The evacuation ships are supposed to be heading to Mars. Why are they coming back? A new voice came over the radio. It was Sergeant Julie Evans coordinating the civilian evacuation from the transport ship New Hope. Captain Morrison, the civilians want to help. They say they won't run away while the military fights alone. Julie, those are not warships. They're carrying children and families. They need to get to safety. Sir, they say their families are on Earth. If Earth dies, they want to die fighting for it. Jake closed his eyes. This was the human way. When everything seemed lost, humans did not run away. They came back to help even when help seemed impossible. Commander Helen Ross's voice came from the heavy cruiser, Earth's Fury. Jake, I have an idea. The New Horizon is badly damaged, but it's still the biggest thing we have. What if we turn it into a giant missile? Jake looked around his command center. The walls were cracked, the lights flickered, and half the control panels were broken. The New Horizon was barely holding together. Helen, this station has 500 people on it. I know. But if we ram it into their flagship at full speed, we might be able to crack their command ship in half. It could save Earth. Jake thought about his crew. They were good people who had families and dreams, but they were also soldiers who understood what duty meant. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. Commander Ross has suggested that we use the New Horizon as a weapon against the enemy flagship. This would be a suicide mission. Anyone who wants to leave should report to the escape pods immediately. Jake waited for his crew to respond. He expected many of them to leave. Instead, Lieutenant Amy Carter stood up at her station. "Captain, I'm staying. This is my ship and my fight." Sergeant Tony Clark nodded from the weapons station. "I'm staying too, sir. These aliens picked the wrong planet to attack." One by one, every member of his crew chose to stay. 500 people decided that dying for Earth was better than living without it. "Jake," Admiral Stone said quietly, "are you sure about this?" "No, Admiral. I'm not sure about anything anymore. But I know we can't let them win without paying the biggest price possible." The remaining human ships formed up around the New Horizon. The damaged defense station would lead the final charge. Behind it, 46 warships prepared to follow their commander into the last battle. Lieutenant Danny Price's voice crackled over the radio from his damaged fighter. "Captain, my engines are barely working, but I can still fly. Mind if I tag along?" "Danny, you've done enough. Get to an evacuation ship." "Sir, my parents live in Chicago." "My sister lives in New York. If this doesn't work, they're going to die anyway. I'd rather die trying to save them." Jake understood. This was not about military duty anymore. This was about protecting the people they loved. The human fleet began its final charge toward the Keithvar flagship. The massive alien ship was 3 times larger than the New Horizon and surrounded by hundreds of escort vessels. It looked like a metal mountain floating in space. "All ships," Jake announced. "This is probably the last time we'll talk to each other. I want you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. Today we show the universe what humans are made of." The Keithvar fleet saw them coming. Thousands of energy weapons opened fire at once. Space filled with deadly light as the aliens tried to stop the charging humans. The first human ships began to explode. The transport New Hope, carrying civilians who had come back to fight, disappeared in a ball of fire. The cruiser Earth's Fury lost its engines and started spinning out of control. Commander Helen Ross's voice came over the radio one last time. "Jake, my ship is finished, but I can still steer. I'm going to ram the escort vessels, clear a path for you." Jake watched Helen's ship crash into 3 Keithvar cruisers. The explosion was so bright it hurt to look at. But it worked. The path to the flagship was open. The New Horizon pushed through the enemy fire. Half the station was on fire now, and the hull was breaking apart. But the engines still worked, and Jake could still steer. "Amy, how long until impact?" 30 seconds. "Captain." Jake looked at his crew one more time. They were scared, but they stood at their posts. They were ready to die for their planet and their people. 20 seconds. The Keithvar flagship grew larger and larger on the screen. Jake could see the aliens inside, working frantically at their controls. They finally understood what humans were willing to do. 10 seconds. Jake thought about Earth turning slowly in space. He thought about the blue oceans and white clouds. He thought about all the people down there who would never know his name. 5 seconds. The New Horizon smashed into the Keithvar flagship at full speed. The impact tore both ships apart. Metal and fire spread across space like a deadly flower. Jake's last thought was that the aliens would remember this day. They would remember that humans fight hardest when they have nothing left to lose. The explosion lit up the entire solar system. When the light faded, both the New Horizon and the Keithvar flagship were gone. But something amazing happened. The remaining Keithvar ships stopped fighting. Without their flagship and their commanders, the alien fleet began to fall apart. Some ships tried to continue the attack, but others started retreating. The perfect Keithvar formation became a confused mob of vessels running in different directions. The sacrifice of the New Horizon had broken the enemy's will to fight. Jake Morrison and his crew had won the impossible victory, but the cost had been terrible. Only 17 human ships survived the battle, and most of them were badly damaged. Earth was safe, but the price of victory would be remembered forever. The silence after the battle was strange and terrible. Where once there had been the sounds of weapons and explosions, now there was only the quiet hum of damaged engines and the soft beeping of emergency signals. Commander Lisa Bell found herself in command of what remained of Earth's defense fleet, 17 ships. That was all that survived from the original 387. She sat in the captain's chair of the damaged cruiser Last Hope and watched the enemy fleet fall apart. The Kethvar ships were scattered across space like leaves blown by a strong wind. Some were retreating at full speed toward the edge of the solar system. Others drifted powerless, their crews too shocked to function. A few were still trying to fight, but they had no coordination and no leadership. "Commander," Lieutenant Sam Hayes called from the communications station. "I'm getting surrender signals from some of the enemy ships. They want to give up." Lisa felt tired in her bones. The battle had lasted 18 hours, and she had not slept in 2 days. Accept their surrender. Have them move to the outer system and wait there. What about the ones that are still fighting? Lisa looked at her tactical screen. About 300 Kethvar ships were still shooting at anything that moved. They seemed confused and angry like wounded animals. Send them a message, tell them their flagship is destroyed and their fleet is broken. If they surrender now, we will not hunt them down. If they keep fighting, we will finish what we started. It was a bluff. The 17 human ships could barely move, let alone fight. But the Kethvar did not know that. Over the next hour, most of the remaining enemy ships stopped fighting and joined the surrender group. By the time the sun rose over Earth, only 17 Kethvar vessels were still trying to escape toward deep space. "Let them go," Lisa ordered. "Let them tell their people what happened here." Dr. Carl Davis called from his hidden research station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. His voice was shaky with emotion. "Commander Bell, I've been monitoring alien communications during the battle. The surviving Kethvar are calling this the greatest military disaster in their history." "How so, Doctor?" "They came here with 9,900 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled by any species. They expected to destroy Earth in a few hours with minimal losses. Instead, they lost 9,883 ships to a species they considered primitive." Lisa looked out at the wreckage floating around Earth. Broken pieces of both human and alien ships drifted like metal snow. The orbital defense platforms were mostly destroyed. 3 cities on Earth had been damaged by falling debris. The cost had been enormous, but Earth was still there. The blue planet turned slowly in space, wounded but alive. "Doctor, start recording everything that happened here. Future generations need to know what these people did." "Already on it, Commander. I'm sending the complete battle records to hidden archives throughout the solar system. Even if something happens to Earth, the story will survive." 3 days later, the first alien visitors arrived. Not Kethvar, but ships from the Galactic Federation. They came slowly and carefully, broadcasting peace signals on every frequency. Ambassador Nancy Turner met them at the ruins of Orbital Station Alpha. Nancy was one of the few diplomats who had survived the battle. She had spent the last 3 days helping coordinate rescue operations. The Federation ambassador was a tall blue creature with 4 arms and large black eyes. His name was something humans could not pronounce, so they called him Ambassador Blue. He looked around at the wreckage, with obvious shock. "Ambassador Turner," Blue said in perfect English, "the Federation Council is having trouble believing the reports we received. Is it true that you defeated a Kethvar fleet of nearly 10,000 ships?" Nancy nodded. "It's true, but the cost was terrible. We lost over 300 ships and thousands of good people. But you won. A species that has been in space for only 200 years defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We didn't win because we were stronger, Ambassador. We won because we were willing to pay any price to protect our home." Ambassador Blue was quiet for a long moment. "The Federation Council wants to offer Earth full membership immediately, with full protection and military support. After what you accomplished here, every species in the galaxy wants you as an ally." Nancy felt a sad smile cross her face. "We would have been happy with friendship. We never wanted to be feared. I am afraid that fear and respect often go together. Ambassador Turner, the Kethvar survivors are telling their story throughout their empire. They speak of humans who fight like demons and refuse to surrender even when death is certain. Other species are listening to these stories with great interest. 6 months later, the rebuilding was well underway. New orbital stations rose from the ashes of the old ones. New ships rolled out of the expanded shipyards. Earth's population had learned something important about themselves during the battle. They were not alone in the universe, and they were not helpless. Young Billy Harper sat in his school classroom on Mars Colony, listening to his teacher tell the story of the Great Battle. Billy was 8 years old, born after the war ended. The battle seemed like ancient history to him. "Can anyone tell me why the Battle of Earth was so important?" the teacher asked. Billy raised his hand. "Because we showed the aliens that humans don't give up." "That's right, Billy, but there's more to it than that. The battle proved that courage and determination can overcome superior technology. It proved that fighting for something you believe in gives you strength that cannot be measured." After school, Billy walked home with his grandfather. The old man had been Lieutenant Amy Carter during the battle, serving on Captain Morrison's station. He was one of the few survivors from the New Horizon who had escaped before the final ramming attack. "Grandpa," Billy asked, "were you really scared during the battle?" The old man smiled. "Terrified, Billy. We were all scared. But being scared doesn't mean you stop fighting. It means you fight even harder for the things that matter. Like family, and home, and the idea that people should be free to live their own lives." Billy looked up at the night sky, where Earth shone like a blue star. Somewhere out there, new human ships were exploring the galaxy. They carried the flag of Earth and the story of the Great Battle. The Kethavar had wanted to destroy humanity because they thought humans were growing too fast and becoming too dangerous. They had been right about the dangerous part, but wrong about what that meant. Humans were dangerous not because they conquered others, but because they refused to be conquered. They were dangerous because they turned their weaknesses into strengths and their fear into courage. The 17 ships that escaped the battle spread the story throughout the Kethavar Empire. They told of a species that fought with impossible bravery and accepted no defeat. The story grew in the telling, becoming legend. Now, whenever alien species faced difficult battles or impossible odds, they remembered the humans of Earth. They remembered that sometimes the smallest force can win the greatest victory if it refuses to give up. Billy Harper would grow up in a galaxy that knew and respected the human name. He would never have to fight a battle like his grandfather did, because the Battle of Earth had already won the war that mattered most, the war for the right to exist free and unafraid among the stars. Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien delegates ignore him. The Galactic Council chamber was huge and filled with creatures from 1,000 worlds. They all thought humans were stupid and weak. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 5 years, and every time was the same. The aliens would talk about important things and then tell humans to wait their turn. The Zalarian delegate stood up on his 6 legs and clicked his mandibles. High Counselor Vextar was tall and covered in purple scales that shimmered under the bright lights. He looked at Jake with his big black eyes and made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. "The human representative wants advanced shield technology again," Vextar said to the other delegates. "Perhaps they should focus on learning to build proper spaceship engines first. Their fastest vessels barely reach 1% of light speed." More laughter filled the chamber. Jake kept his face calm, but inside he was smiling. If only these aliens knew what was really happening in the dark spaces around Earth. If only they could see what Admiral Lisa Carter was building right now, in the cold emptiness beyond Pluto. Far from the council chamber and the mocking aliens, Admiral Carter floated in her command pod deep inside a massive construction site. Around her, millions of human workers and robots carved tunnels through rock and metal. They were not building a space station or a mining facility. They were turning an entire dwarf planet into the most powerful warship the galaxy had ever seen. Carter pressed her hand against the viewing port and looked out at the work crews. Sparks flew from welding torches as they installed the last of the main cannon arrays. The dwarf planet had been called Series 7 when they started 10 years ago. Now it was the Titan-class planetary warship New Earth, home to 50 million humans and enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Admiral, the final power cores are coming online," said Captain Bill Rogers from his station. He was young but had spent his whole life training for this moment. Like all the workers here, he had been born in one of the secret colonies that existed in the dark between worlds. Carter nodded and activated her communicator. "Dr. Stone, what is our status on the main weapon systems?" Dr. Richard Stone was floating in the engineering section, surrounded by holographic displays showing power readings and system diagnostics. He had gray hair and tired eyes from working for 30 years on humanity's greatest secret. He was one of the few people old enough to remember when the project began, when Earth first realized the aliens would never accept them as equals. "All systems show green, Admiral," Stone replied. "The quantum fusion reactors are stable and the mass driver cannons are calibrated. We could level a continent from 1,000 light-years away if we wanted to." Stone looked at the readings and felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. Every piece of technology in New Earth had been stolen, reverse-engineered, or improved from alien designs. The Galactic Council had refused to share their knowledge, thinking humans were too primitive to understand it. They were wrong about the understanding part. When the first human diplomat had visited the Council 300 years ago, the aliens had laughed then too. They gave humans a few basic technologies and told them to be grateful. What they did not know is that humans were very good at taking things apart and making them better. Carter moved through the corridors of New Earth and saw the proof of human determination everywhere. Cities existed inside the hollowed-out planetoid, complete with parks and schools and shopping centers. Children played in artificial gravity fields, while their parents worked in factories that could build starships faster than any alien world. The artificial star at the center of New Earth provided power and light to the millions of people who called this place home. It was not just a weapon. It was a complete human civilization, hidden in the darkness where aliens never looked. "Admiral Carter to all department heads," she announced through the ship-wide communication system. "Report to the main briefing room in 1 hour. We have received priority communications from Earth Command." In the briefing room, Carter looked at the faces of her senior officers. These were the men and women who had spent their lives preparing for a war that aliens thought would never come. They knew about the other Titan-class ships being built in secret locations throughout the galaxy. They knew about the hidden human colonies that existed in the space between stars. "The Korthak Empire is mobilizing," Carter announced. "Intelligence. Reports indicate they are preparing for a galaxy-wide conquest. Earth Command believes they will move within the next 6 months." Colonel Janet Walsh, the ship's military commander, leaned forward in her chair. She'd been training human soldiers in secret for 20 years. Her troops were enhanced with alien biotechnology and armed with weapons that combined the best of human engineering with stolen alien designs. "Are we finally going to show ourselves?" Walsh asked. Carter nodded slowly. "The Council of Elders has made their decision. 3 centuries of hiding in the darkness ends now. When the Korthak begin their attack, they will discover that humanity is not the weak species they believe us to be." Dr. Stone pulled up a holographic display showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of other Titan-class warships. Blue dots showed hidden human bases and manufacturing facilities. Green dots indicated allied species who had been secretly working with humanity. "We have 47 Titan-class vessels, ready for combat," Stone reported. "Each one carries between 20 and 60 million humans. Our manufacturing capability exceeds the combined output of the top 10 alien civilizations." Carter studied the display and felt a mix of pride and sadness. Humanity had been forced to hide their true nature for 3 centuries because aliens could not accept them as equals. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when humans stopped pretending to be weak. Back in the council chamber, Jake Morrison received a coded message on his personal communicator. The time for pretending was almost over. Soon he would stand before these mocking aliens and reveal the truth about humanity's real capabilities. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake when they decided humans were not worth their respect. They had given humanity the greatest gift possible: underestimation. While the aliens focused on their own politics and ignored the primitive humans, humanity had been building the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars from the observation deck of New Earth. Somewhere out there, the Korthak Empire was preparing to conquer the galaxy. They thought it would be easy because they believed the established species were weak and divided. They had no idea that while the galaxy slept, humanity had been preparing for war. The first reports came through the Galactic Communication Network at 0347 Standard Time. The Korthak Empire had launched surprise attacks on 12 major civilizations simultaneously. Their biomechanical warships moved through space like living nightmares, tearing apart everything in their path. Admiral Peter Hayes stood on the bridge of Guardian Prime and watched the emergency transmissions flood in from across the galaxy. His Titan-class warship had been stationed at the edge of known space for 15 years, waiting for this moment. The massive planetoid hung in the darkness between stars, invisible to any sensors the galaxy possessed. "Sir, we are receiving distress calls from the Altarian system," reported Lieutenant Commander Nancy Brown from her communication station. "The Korthak fleet is moving toward Earth." Hayes nodded and activated the ship-wide alert system. Throughout Guardian Prime, 58 million humans began preparing for combat. They had trained for this day their entire lives. Children learned tactical analysis before they learned to read. Adults worked in weapon factories and simulation chambers. Everyone knew their role in humanity's greatest revelation. The Galactic Council's emergency session was chaos. Ambassador Jake Morrison watched alien delegates panic as their homeworlds fell to Korthak forces. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were fleeing like scared animals. High Counselor Vextar's purple scales had turned pale gray with fear. "The Korthak bioships are immune to our weapons," he announced to the chamber. "They adapt to any attack within minutes. We need to evacuate the core worlds immediately." Other delegates shouted in their various languages. The mighty galactic civilization that had dismissed humanity was crumbling in hours. Morrison sat quietly and waited for the coded signal from Earth Command. Soon these aliens would learn that they had badly misjudged the human race. Captain Susan Blake checked her fighter systems one final time. She commanded Raptor Squadron, 36 of humanity's most advanced combat pilots. They had been born and raised in the zero-gravity training facilities hidden throughout the solar system. While alien pilots thought in 2 dimensions, humans had learned to fight in 3. "All Raptors, this is Blake," she transmitted to her squadron. "Today we show the galaxy what human pilots can do. Remember your training and trust your instincts. The enemy thinks space combat is about big ships shooting at each other. We are going to teach them about precision." The Korthak battle fleet approaching Earth was massive. 300 biomechanical warships moved in perfect formation, their living hulls pulsing with dark energy. They had conquered 17 civilizations, using the same tactics, overwhelmed the enemy with superior numbers and adaptive technology. What the Korthak did not expect was Guardian Prime. Admiral Hayes gave the order, and his planet-sized warship decloaked directly in the path of the Korthak fleet. The enemy ship stopped moving as their commanders tried to understand what they were seeing. The largest Korthak vessel was 5 kilometers long. Guardian Prime was over 12,000 kilometers in diameter. "This is Admiral Peter Hayes of the Terran Defense Force," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You have entered human space without permission. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Korthak fleet commander responded with typical arrogance. His bioship's living hull changed color as he spoke, the alien equivalent of showing anger and contempt. "Unknown vessel, you will surrender or be destroyed. No single ship can stand against the might of the Korthak Empire." Hayes smiled and turned to his weapons officer. "Commander Kelly, demonstrate our point defense systems." Tony Mitchell worked frantically in the engineering section of Guardian Prime as the massive weapon arrays came online. The artificial star at the heart of the ship provided more power than most civilizations used in a year. Energy flowed through quantum conduits to cannons that could crack planets in half. The first Korthak attack was standard procedure. They launched 1,000 biomissiles at the human ship, each one designed to adapt to enemy defenses and burrow through armor plating. The living projectiles moved through space like angry wasps, Guardian Prime's point defense grid activated, and the darkness lit up with energy beams. Each human cannon was controlled by artificial intelligence that could track and destroy targets faster than biological minds could process. The biomissiles died by the hundreds as precise laser fire cut them apart. Not a single Korthak weapon reached the human ship. Captain Blake launched from Guardian Prime's massive fighter bays along with 5,000 other human pilots. The Raptor fighters were small and fast, designed to use the three-dimensional nature of space combat that aliens had never mastered. The Korthak had evolved on a water world where combat was mostly horizontal. Their tactics reflected this limitation. They arranged their ships in flat formations and expected enemies to attack from predictable angles. Blake led her squadron in a vertical dive that took the enemy completely by surprise. Human fighters attacked from above and below simultaneously, while the main Korthak fleet was still trying to process Guardian Prime's defensive display. "Target their sensor clusters," Blake ordered her pilots. "These bioships adapt to damage, but they need to see us first." The battle became a masterclass in human tactical thinking. While Korthak commanders tried to adapt their weapons to Guardian Prime's defenses, human fighters systematically destroyed their ability to coordinate attacks. The living warships began to panic as their sensory systems failed. Engineer Mitchell brought the main cannons online, and Admiral Hayes watched with satisfaction as quantum energy beams reached out across space. Each shot was precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy. Humanity wanted prisoners and intelligence, not just victory. The Korthak battle fleet that had conquered 12 civilizations was reduced to helpless debris in less than 2 hours. Their bioships floated in space, alive but crippled, their adaptive systems overwhelmed by human precision and firepower. Throughout the galaxy, species that had fled from Korthak attacks received the battle recordings. They watched in amazement as a single human vessel defeated an entire conquest fleet. The primitive species they had dismissed for centuries had just demonstrated military superiority that surpassed anything in known space. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Morrison stood up as the final Korthak ship was disabled. The alien delegates stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to terror. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted completely. "Honorable delegates," Morrison announced calmly, "humanity would like to request a formal review of our membership status in the Galactic Council. It appears our previous applications may have been based on incomplete information about our capabilities." High Counselor Vextar's legs trembled as he realized the truth. For 3 centuries, the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been sitting quietly in council chambers, asking politely for basic technologies while secretly building weapons that made their own fleets obsolete. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major civilization crowded into the chamber, their faces showing fear and confusion. The Korthak attack had shattered their understanding of galactic power, but the human response had destroyed their understanding of reality itself. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked to the center of the chamber and activated the holographic display system. For 3 centuries, he had stood in this same spot asking for basic technologies while aliens laughed at humanity's primitive nature. Today, he would reveal the greatest deception in galactic history. "Honorable delegates," Morrison began, "humanity has been less than completely honest about our capabilities." The massive screens around the chamber came to life, showing images from the battle at Earth. Guardian Prime filled the displays, its planet-sized bulk dwarfing the Korthak fleet. Alien delegates gasped as they watched human fighters move through space in ways that defied everything they knew about combat tactics. High Counselor Vextar stood on his shaking legs and pointed at the screen with one of his clawed hands. "This is impossible. Our scouts have surveyed the human system extensively. There are no structures of this size anywhere near Earth." Morrison smiled and changed the display to show a star map of human space. Red dots appeared throughout the galaxy, each one marking a location where humanity had been secretly building for centuries. The dots formed a network that stretched from the galactic core to the outer rim. The Zalarian survey ships were looking in the wrong places, Morrison explained. We have been expanding into the dark spaces between stars where no species bothers to explore. While you focused on habitable worlds and resource-rich systems, humanity claimed the empty void. Admiral Lisa Carter's image appeared on the communication screen as her massive ship, New Earth, approached the galactic core. The Titan-class warship moved slowly through space, its artificial gravity fields bending light around its enormous hull. Smaller vessels that would normally be considered battleships looked like insects flying around a mountain. I am Admiral Carter of the Terran Defense Force, she announced to the assembled delegates. For 300 years, humanity has been preparing for this moment. We knew the galaxy would never accept us as equals, so we decided to become something greater. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as representatives realized the implications. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were suddenly faced with a civilization that had surpassed them while hiding in plain sight. Dr. Richard Stone appeared on another screen, broadcasting from the research facilities deep inside New Earth. Behind him, massive manufacturing complexes stretched into the distance, producing starships at a rate that seemed impossible. Our quantum assembly systems can construct a heavy cruiser in 6 hours, Stone explained to the stunned delegates. A battleship takes 2 days. The manufacturing capacity of a single Titan-class vessel exceeds the combined shipbuilding capability of the 10 most advanced galactic civilizations. Stone activated a demonstration that showed the human manufacturing process in action. Raw materials flowed through molecular assemblers that built ships from the atomic level up. The technology was based on alien designs that humanity had reverse-engineered and improved beyond recognition. Commander Rachel Turner piloted her reconnaissance ship through the outer systems, documenting the deployment of additional human forces. The 3rd and 4th Titan-class vessels were moving into position, their massive forms creating gravitational anomalies that could be detected from light-years away. Fortress Sol is taking position at the galactic barrier, Turner reported to Admiral Carter. Vanguard has moved to secure the trade routes between the inner worlds. Both ships report full combat readiness. Each Titan-class vessel was more than just a warship. They were complete human civilizations, carrying populations that exceeded most alien homeworlds. The ships contained universities, research facilities, manufacturing centers, and military academies. They were humanity's answer to the question of how to survive in a galaxy that refused to accept them. The alien delegates watched in growing horror as more human vessels appeared on the tactical displays. Ships emerged from hidden bases in asteroid fields and nebulae. Battle fleets decloaked from positions they had held for decades. The galaxy was full of human forces that had been invisible until now. Morrison continued his presentation, showing the delegates exactly how humanity had accomplished the impossible. We used your own dismissive attitudes against you. Every time you refused to share technology, we stole it and made it better. Every time you laughed at our primitive ships, we built better ones in secret. The Altarian representative, her blue skin pale with shock, stood up from her floating chair. How many ships do you have? How many people? Morrison smiled and activated another display. Our current military force consists of 47 Titan-class planetary warships, each carrying between 20 and 60 million humans. We also maintain over 3,000 heavy battleships, 15,000 cruisers, and approximately 50,000 smaller vessels. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had built a military force that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had done it slowly and carefully over 3 centuries, using the alien tendency to ignore primitive species as perfect camouflage. Dr. Stone provided technical details that left alien scientists speechless. Human technology had surpassed galactic standards in every meaningful category. Their weapons were more powerful, their defenses stronger, their ships faster and more maneuverable. Our understanding of physics developed in isolation from galactic mainstream science, Stone explained. This allowed us to explore theoretical possibilities that established civilizations had dismissed as impossible. Dark matter manipulation, quantum entanglement communication, and artificial singularity power generation are standard features of our technology. The revelation that humanity possessed scientific knowledge beyond galactic understanding was the final shock for many delegates. They had spent centuries believing that their civilizations represented the peak of development. Now they discovered that the primitive species they had ignored possessed capabilities that made their own technology seem obsolete. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the main screen as New Earth settled into a stable orbit around the Council Station. The planet-sized warship cast a shadow that darkened entire sections of the facility. "The Galactic Council has a choice to make," Carter announced. "You can continue to treat humanity as a minor species and face the consequences, or you can accept us as the dominant military power we have become. The age of alien supremacy is over." Morrison looked around the chamber at the faces of delegates who had spent their careers dismissing human potential. The laughter and condescension were gone, replaced by fear and respect. The galaxy had awakened to find that while they slept, humanity had inherited the stars. The Korthak Empire had ruled through fear for 1,000 years, but the defeat of their Earth invasion fleet changed everything. Their biomechanical warships that had conquered dozens of civilizations suddenly seemed small and weak compared to humanity's planet-sized vessels. Emperor Thakmor sat in his living throne aboard the massive bioship Devourer and watched the reports from across the galaxy. 3 more Korthak fleets had been destroyed by human forces in the past week. Each battle followed the same pattern. Korthak ships would attack expecting easy victory, only to face weapons and tactics they could not understand or counter. Emperor's chitinous shell darkened with rage as he realized the truth. The galaxy was no longer his to conquer. An unknown species had built a military force that made his empire look primitive by comparison. Admiral Ben Foster commanded the 5th Titan-class warship Liberty's Dawn as it moved through the Centauri Nebula toward the largest space battle in galactic history. 3 Korthak invasion fleets had converged on the nebula, planning to use its energy storms as cover for their advance toward the galactic core. What they found instead was a human fleet that had been waiting for them. Foster stood on his command bridge and watched the tactical displays show enemy positions. The Korthak had brought over 800 warships to this battle, their largest force since the beginning of their expansion. They expected the nebula's interference to disable advanced sensors and reduce the fight to close-range combat, where their bioships held advantages. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Foster," he broadcast to the fleet. "Execute Battle Plan Prometheus. Show these invaders what happens when they threaten innocent worlds." Captain Laura Price commanded the human battle doctrine from her heavy cruiser Determination. She had spent 15 years developing new ways to use humanity's technological advantages in large-scale combat. Her innovations were about to be tested against the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever faced. "All squadrons, implement Dispersal Pattern 7, Price ordered her fleet commanders. "Remember, we are not just fighting for humanity today. Every species in this galaxy is counting on us to stop the Korthak advance." The Battle of Centauri Nebula began with the Korthak doing exactly what human strategists had predicted. Their bioships moved in tight formations, using their adaptive armor to share defensive capabilities. It was a tactic that had worked against every other species they had encountered. Human forces responded with something the Korthak had never seen before. Instead of matching their tight formations, human ships spread out across thousands of cubic kilometers of space. Each vessel operated independently, while remaining connected through quantum communication networks that ignored the nebula's interference. The Korthak found themselves fighting not one large fleet, but hundreds of smaller groups that appeared and disappeared throughout the nebula. Human ships would emerge from the energy storms, deliver devastating attacks, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Colonel Steve Morgan watched the space battle from the ground as his troops prepared to liberate the Vegan colonies. The Korthak had enslaved over 6 billion beings on 12 worlds in this system. Human forces were about to show the galaxy that their military superiority extended beyond space combat. Morgan's soldiers were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. They wore powered armor that combined human engineering with alien biotechnology. Their weapons fired ammunition that adapted to enemy defenses in real time. Most importantly, they fought with an intensity and determination that terrified their enemies. "All units, begin planetary assault," Morgan ordered, as human dropships descended through the atmosphere. Remember, these worlds contain enslaved populations. Precision is more important than speed. The Korthak ground forces had expected to face typical galactic military units armed with standard energy weapons and basic armor. Instead, they encountered humans who treated warfare as a science and had spent centuries perfecting every aspect of combat. Human soldiers moved through Korthak defensive positions like ghosts. Their armor provided perfect camouflage while their weapons fired projectiles that could penetrate any known defense. More importantly, they fought as coordinated units where every soldier understood their role in complex tactical plans. Above the planet, Admiral Foster's fleet demonstrated why human space combat doctrine was revolutionizing warfare. Liberty's Dawn engaged 3 Korthak bioships simultaneously, its massive weapons arrays firing with precision that seemed impossible for such a large vessel. The planet-sized warship moved through space like a dancer rather than a battering ram. Human engineers had solved the fundamental problem of large vessel maneuverability by treating the ship as a collection of smaller units working in perfect harmony. Captain Price coordinated the final phase of the battle as Korthak resistance collapsed throughout the nebula. Human forces had destroyed over 600 enemy vessels while losing fewer than 30 of their own ships. The victory was so complete that surviving Korthak commanders began surrendering rather than face continued slaughter. Admiral Foster, we are receiving surrender transmissions from the remaining Korthak forces, Price reported. They are requesting terms. Foster looked at the tactical display showing the devastation of the enemy fleet. The Korthak Empire's largest military operation had been reduced to scattered survivors in less than 6 hours. The message this would send across the galaxy would be impossible to ignore. Colonel Morgan's ground forces had achieved similar success on the planetary surface. Korthak occupation troops that had terrorized enslaved populations for decades were surrendering to human soldiers they could barely see. The liberated beings watched in amazement as their oppressors fled from warriors who seemed to appear from nowhere. The aftermath of the Battle of Centauri Nebula sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of Korthak expansion suddenly realized that the invaders could be defeated. More importantly, they saw that humanity was willing to fight not just for their own survival, but for the freedom of all galactic civilizations. Emperor Thakmor received the battle reports and felt something his species had never experienced before: true fear. The Korthak Empire had built their power on the belief that they were the ultimate predators. Now they faced a species that hunted predators. Admiral Foster stood on the observation deck of Liberty's Dawn and watched human ships escort surrendered Korthak vessels to processing centers. The enemy empire was beginning to fracture as their commanders realized that continued resistance meant certain destruction. Throughout the galaxy, species that had hidden from Korthak forces began to fight back. The human example had shown them that the invaders were not invincible. Rebellions erupted on occupied worlds as enslaved populations rose against their oppressors. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely, and everyone knew that humanity was now the dominant force among the stars. The final battle for galactic freedom would be fought in the Korthak home system, where Emperor Thakmor had ruled for 800 years. 7 Titan-class warships moved through hyperspace toward the heart of the enemy empire, carrying the hopes of every enslaved species in the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the command bridge of Terra Invictus, the newest and largest of humanity's planet-sized warships. The massive vessel served as the flagship for the combined human fleet, its artificial cities housing over 90 million people, and its weapon systems capable of destroying entire star systems. Terra Invictus was more than a warship. It represented humanity's true destiny among the stars, a mobile civilization that could travel anywhere in the galaxy and establish human presence wherever it went. The ship contained universities, research centers, manufacturing facilities, and everything needed to build a new world from nothing. Major Frank Kelly coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history from his position in the fleet command center. Over 2 million human vessels were converging on the Korthak home system from dozens of different directions. The attack had been planned for 50 years and involved resources from every human colony in known space. All Titan-class, Vessels report ready for final approach, Kelly announced to Admiral Carter. Guardian Prime, New Earth, Liberty's Dawn, Fortress Sol, Vanguard, Freedom's Call, and Terra Invictus are in position for coordinated assault. The Korthak home system was the most heavily defended location in their empire. Thousands of bioships patrolled the space around their homeworld, while planetary defense systems that had never been tested in actual combat prepared for the human attack. Emperor Thakmor sat in his palace and watched the approaching human fleet on his strategic displays. The 7 planet-sized warships looked like moving moons as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of his system. Behind them came a flood of smaller vessels that seemed to stretch across the entire galaxy. "Deploy all defensive fleets," the Emperor ordered his commanders. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we possess will be used in this battle. If we cannot defeat the humans here, our empire dies today." Dr. Richard Stone worked frantically in the research sections of Terra Invictus as he prepared humanity's final secret weapon. For 3 centuries, human scientists had been developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Today, they would reveal the ultimate expression of human scientific achievement. "Admiral Carter, the quantum resonance network is ready for activation," Stone reported. "All Titan-class vessels are connected and synchronized. When we activate the system, every human ship in the galaxy will be able to coordinate their actions in real time." The quantum network represented the true scope of human expansion. For hundreds of years, humanity had been placing communication relays in the dark spaces between galaxies. The network connected every human settlement, every hidden base, every secret research facility across known space and beyond. Captain Susan Blake led the first wave of fighter attacks against the Korthak defensive perimeter. Her squadron had grown from 36 pilots to over 50,000 as humanity revealed the true size of their military forces. The pilots were enhanced with biotechnology and trained in combat techniques that made them nearly invincible. "All fighter wings, this is Blake," she transmitted to the massive formation. "Today we end the Korthak threat forever. Show them what human pilots can accomplish when we fight for freedom instead of survival." The battle began with the Korthak doing what they always did when faced with superior numbers. Their bioships formed defensive clusters and prepared to adapt to whatever weapons the humans used against them. They had won 1,000 battles using these tactics and expected this fight to be no different. They were wrong about everything. Admiral Carter activated the quantum resonance network, and suddenly every human vessel in the galaxy was connected in a single coordinated intelligence. Ships separated by thousands of light years could share targeting data and coordinate attacks with perfect precision. The 7 Titan-class warships moved into formation around the Korthak homeworld and began the most devastating display of firepower the galaxy had ever witnessed. Each planet-sized vessel possessed weapons that could crack moons in half, and they used these weapons with surgical precision to disable rather than destroy. Major Kelly watched the tactical displays as human forces systematically dismantled the Korthak defensive network. Enemy bioships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were reduced to helpless hulks floating in space. The adaptive armor and weapons that had made them so dangerous were useless against human precision and overwhelming firepower. The Korthak ground defenses activated as human landing forces approached their homeworld. Millions of biomechanical warriors emerged from underground bunkers, ready to fight to the death to protect their emperor and their way of life. Colonel Steve Morgan led the planetary assault with troops that had been enhanced far beyond normal human capabilities. His soldiers moved through Korthak defenses like unstoppable forces of nature, their advanced armor and weapons making them nearly invincible against conventional attacks. "All ground units, remember our objective," Morgan transmitted to his forces. "We are here to capture their leadership and end this war, not to destroy their civilization. These beings can learn to live in peace if we give them the chance." The final confrontation came when human forces reached Emperor Thakmor's palace. The ancient ruler who had conquered dozens of worlds found himself face to face with Colonel Morgan and a squad of human soldiers who seemed more like legends than living beings. "Your empire is finished," Morgan told the Emperor through his translator. "Surrender now and your people can live in peace." continue fighting and face complete destruction. Emperor Thakmor looked at the human soldiers and realized that his species had made a terrible mistake. They had built their empire on the belief that strength came from conquest and domination. The humans had shown them that true strength came from unity and the willingness to fight for others instead of just themselves. Dr. Stone stood in the observation section of Terra Invictus and watched as the quantum network revealed the true scope of human expansion. Dozens of additional Titan-class vessels decloaked throughout the galaxy, each one positioned in a location that had been prepared for centuries. The galaxy realized that humanity had not just been building warships in secret. They had been expanding into unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim, establishing colonies and research stations in areas that other species had never imagined could support life. Ambassador Jake Morrison addressed the transformed Galactic Council from his position aboard Terra Invictus. The chamber that had once dismissed humanity as primitive now hosted representatives who understood that the balance of power had shifted permanently. The age of galactic empires built on conquest and oppression is over, Morrison announced. Humanity offers partnership and cooperation to all species willing to live in peace. Those who choose the path of war will face the consequences of challenging a united galaxy. Admiral Carter walked through the corridors of Terra Invictus and saw the future of humanity stretching before them. The ship's manufacturing centers were already producing materials for new colonies in distant galaxies. The research laboratories were developing technologies that would allow humans to explore regions of space that had never been mapped. The secret phase of human expansion was complete. For 3 centuries, humanity had hidden their true nature while building the most powerful civilization in galactic history. Now they could explore the universe openly, backed by a fleet that made them the protectors of freedom throughout known space. The galaxy had learned too late that while they slept, humanity had been preparing to inherit not just the stars but everything beyond them.